We worked in section 5.1 on one-step inequalities that required adding and subtracting. Today we'll do it with multiplying and dividing. So I mentioned that with adding and subtracting, there's literally no difference in the way you solve an inequality or an equation. However, with multiplying and dividing, there is one exception. When you divide or multiply by a negative number, you must flip the inequality. And I should say the inequality sign. You need to adjust that. So flip the inequality sign. In other words, if it was less than, you change it to greater than. If it was greater than or equal to, you change it to less than or equal to. So you don't change whether or not it has the underline for or equal to. If it doesn't have one, it still won't. If it does have one, it still will. But you've got to flip it from a less than to a greater than, or from a greater to a less. Okay? So first, we're just told to match each inequality with this corresponding statement. So we're not having to solve these. We're just trying to see what each of these go with. Okay? So 3 times a number is at most 9. So 3 times a number is obviously 3 times, they're using n over here. So right now we could go ahead and limit it down to number 1 and number 3 this goes with. But we got to remember what we said yesterday. At most means less than or equal to. So at most, less than or equal to 9. So that would go with number 3. So number 3 is A. Sorry about that. Okay, 1/3 of a number. Remember, of turns into times. So 1/3 of a number is no more than. So that means less than or equal to 9. So that would go with number 5. So that's why it's really important, and why on the end of the notes for 5.1 I gave you that key as far as remembering what things like at most or no more than means. Okay, negative 3 times a number. So negative 3 times a number is more than, same as greater than, 9. Okay, so that would put us at 4, because it's just greater than, not greater than or equal to. Okay, 3 times a number. 3n is less than 9. So that goes up with number 1. Negative 3 times the number is at least, remember at least means greater than or equal to 9. So that goes with number 6. And I know you can figure this out by the process of elimination, but let's go ahead and interpret. 1/3 of a number, 1/3 times n, is greater than or equal to 9. So that does line up with what number 2's inequality is. Okay, now as we're about to actually solve some, I want to remind us again. This works the same way as solving equations, but if you divide or multiply by a negative number, you must flip the inequality sign. Okay, so on number 7, I'll zoom in a little more. That's 14 times g. So we do the opposite and we divide. And 56 divided by 14 is 4. So g is greater than 4. Number 8 is 11 times w, so we need to divide by 11 on both sides. So we get w is less than 7. Okay, now the difference between number 9 and number 10 is very important to see. So in number 9, we do have a negative number. However, to solve this, what we need to do is divide by 20. So we are not dividing by a negative number. We're dividing this by a positive 20. So we do not need to flip anything on this one because what we're dividing both sides by is a positive number. So it's not if your answer, like our answer is going to be negative, it's going to be b is greater than or equal to negative 6. But that's okay. That doesn't mean we need to flip the inequality sign. It's only if what we're dividing by or multiplying by, the thing that happens to both sides, is when that's negative, we flip the inequality. So here we do not. But in number 10, it's negative 8 times r, so we will divide both sides by negative 8. So since what we're doing to both sides has to do with a negative number, this time we will flip the inequality sign. So we'll have r is greater than negative 2. So make sure you know that. Just because this number over here is negative doesn't mean we have to flip the inequality. It's when the number we divide or multiply both sides by is negative, we flip the inequality. Flip the inequality sign. Okay, number 11, we have negative 15 times p. So we divide both sides by negative 15. And since we're dividing by a negative number, we do flip the inequality sign, make it greater than or equal to. Negative 90 divided by negative 15 is positive 6. This is doing x divided by 4. So the opposite of dividing by is multiplying by. So we multiply both sides by 4. X is less than 36. Okay, and here with 13 and 14, we see a very similar thing to what was going on with 9 and 10. There is a negative number on this side, but what we'll multiply by, sorry, I should have adjusted that earlier. That's better. What we're going to multiply by is a positive 9. So since we're multiplying both sides by positive 9, we don't flip the, we do not flip the inequality sign. Let's see, 9 times 5 is 45. 9 times 10 is 90, so that's negative 135. Okay, a reminder, when you have a negative with a fraction, you can put the negative anywhere you want. So they put it out front, but we could treat it just like it's negative p over 7, or treat it like it's p over negative 7. These three all mean the same thing. The negative can be out front, on top, or on the bottom. So I'm going to think of it like it's on the bottom and just think this is really p divided by negative 7. So we need to multiply both sides by negative 7. And since I multiplied by a negative number, I have to flip the inequality sign. And negative 9 times negative 7 is positive 63. Okay, we're going to keep solving. Just like I did on the previous one, I'm going to treat this as though the negative is with the 12. So I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 12. Since I multiplied by a negative number, I have to flip the inequality sign, make it less than or equal to negative 72. Here I've got 5 times z, so I'll divide both sides by 5. I'm dividing by a positive number, so I get z is less than negative 18. (17), we're multiplying by negative 13, so we divide both sides by negative 13. Since we're dividing by a negative number, we have to flip the inequality sign to a less than, and negative 26 divided by negative 13 is positive 2. K is being divided by 5, so we multiply both sides by 5. So we get K is less than or equal to, let's see, 5 times 7 is 35, 5 times 10 is 50, so negative 85. Okay, number 19, there's just a negative. So treat this like a negative 1, because the y being negative is the same thing as y being multiplied by negative 1. So we will divide both sides by -1. And since we're dividing by a negative number, we do have to flip the inequality sign and make it y is greater than -36. A 20, it's -16 times c, so we divide both sides by -16. Since we're dividing by a negative number, we have to flip the inequality sign, and -224 divided by -16 is -16 is +14. Okay, 21, we're going to treat this just like it's h divided by -10, so we'll multiply both sides by -10. So we flip the inequality sign because we multiplied by a negative number. We get greater than or equal to 2 times -10 is -20. (22), we're dividing by 12, so we multiply both sides by 12. 12 times 12 is 144, is greater than D. Now, you may remember yesterday when we were graphing, I recommended you flip this around and write it with the variable on the left. Now, that's fine if you want to do that, but when we're solving, I'll accept either one of these. And honestly, you don't have to flip it when you're graphing. Just usually makes it easier to know how to graph it. But as far as solving, it does not matter if your variable is on the left or the right. You can leave it in either side. Okay, last four. Same way we ended, I think, yesterday's lesson. We want to choose a variable, write an inequality, and solve the problem. So 4 times the number, so I'll say 4n, 4 times n, is greater than -48. So we divide both sides by 4. N is greater than -12. Okay, sorry for the typo there, 1/8 of a number. So 1/8 of x is less than or equal to 3. Okay, so on this one, multiplying by 1/8 is the same thing as saying x divided by 8. Because if you think about it, this is x over 1, this is 1 over 8. 1 times x, 8 times 1. So now we multiply both sides by 8, and we get x is less than or equal to 24. Okay, -12 times the number is no more than, so it's less than or equal to, because it could be up to 84, which is where we have equal to, but it can't be bigger than it, so it must be smaller than it. So no more than is less than or equal to. Then we divide both sides by -12. And since we're dividing by a negative number, we will have to flip the inequality sign the other direction. And 84 divided by -12 is -7. Okay, 8 times a number is at least, so it's greater than or equal to 16. We can divide both sides by 8. We get n is greater than or equal to 2.